Right now, I'm sure everyone has some sort of AI app installed on their phone, and we have all seen that how incredibly useful it has been to everyone. Whether you're using it to analyze complex legislative data, streamlining the municipal public services, or drafting the public memos, it's incredibly easy to actually treat treat the cloud as an invisible and limitless resource. We just type in a prompt, hit enter, and the magic just happens. But do you know the physical reality behind that magic? So a 2011 report by Google actually highlighted that every single time you type in a prompt, it will actually consume approximately 0.24 watt-hours of electricity and 0.26 milliliter of water. Now, holding a fraction of milliliter of water or holding a fraction of a watt may sound completely insignificant. However, as a government official, you know better than anyone else that public infrastructure is all about the scale. Let's talk about the most popular AI tool available today, ChatGPT. According to a Vice report, ChatGPT processes over 2.5 billion queries every single day. And let me put that in perspective so you can understand. That translates to about 600 megawatts of electricity. And that is enough to power an average home for roughly 60 years. And other than that, half of that 600 megawatts of electricity is enough to fully charge 5,000 EV vehicles, which is like a Tesla Model 3. And this is data from last year, July. Just imagine how much resources it is consuming today. And when we multiply this single application usage by the millions of future users that are going to adapt these AI tools, the reality becomes clear. This cloud is no longer an invisible and weightless thing. And that massive weight is exactly why we are standing here today. Good morning, esteemed leaders and government officials. My name is Hausit, and alongside me,
I'm Jay. I'm Suchen. I'm Chi.
And today we are here to present the ecological cost of compute. We will be focusing around the energy and water consumed by the data centers. Behind the massive ecological promises of the tech sector lies a massive unchecked expansion of hyperscale data centers. And in this presentation, we have two goals. First, we expose the unsustainable footprint of data centers, and secondly, we urge immediate government intervention. As a leader, our municipal stability is your mandate, and that stability is currently under severe threat by the unchecked corporate resource consumption. Therefore, our thesis is clear. The government must implement strict ecological policies immediately. And to guide you through that crisis, we are going to cover three main ideas. First, the severe grid stress by the data centers posing onto our local utilities. And secondly, we'll talk about the legislation required to actually enforce corporate accountability. And lastly, we'll visualize the path to a more sustainable future. We shall not allow the digital revolution to dry our resources. Next, I will pass the floor to my teammate Zuzhen.
Okay, thank you, Hausit. And now I will introduce two major challenges that faced by government. First is the demand for water. And as we know, the data centers may use a lot of water to cooling their servers and prevent the overheating. So in some cases, a single facility can use up to 5 million gallons of water per day. This is already roughly about a small town daily usage water up to 50,000 residents. And next is the demand accelerate. So, for example, according to our Brookings institution, there are about 870% increase just for the demand of the water because of the facility that builds more and more. And this will converting to our public resources. For example, in some areas or regions that already faced with the water problem, they still build the data centers. So the data centers have become the major consumer that of the water resources. And next is the demand for energy. From the data, about 4.4% of the total electricity used in US is just for the data centers. So the demand is growing rapidly. As we know, an AI infrastructure is not like other industries. It needs to operate continuously 24-hour non-stop. Therefore, it needs to have a very stable and high electricity demand. And this will lead to a grid capacity challenges. For example, the electrical infrastructure need to support the growth loads of data centers. And last but not least, it's also a hidden environmental impact by the data centers. As we know, the data centers always built from the fossil fuel plants, which will affect the environmental sustainable. So when these all problems suffer, who will be the one who manage them? It's governments. First, the governments need to expand the substations to support the electricity demand, and also the government need to reinforce the power grid to maintain the stability. And third, the government is responsible to manage the water infrastructure to as the data centers use a lot of water daily. And last, the government need to manage the public consequence when the system is under pressure. For example, the rolling light outs and others. Therefore, when a government is the role who manage the problem, but who is the direct experience the problem is community. So here is the impacts on community well-being. First, the community will face for the rising cost of the electricity and also the water. And next, the community will face with the overloaded utility system. And third, they also will face with the draft restriction, like if there's a water limit in some regions, so they can't use many water and their water will be limit for the use. And next one is, it will be some environmental degradation, like because of that, the over extraction of the water resources and the fossil fuel will impact on the environmental sustainable. And last is the residents will face with the problem of rolling blackouts when in the period of the peak demand. So the data centers, the expansion of data centers has bring many impacts towards the community and already affect the daily life of the residents. And next, I will pass to Chi to explain for the adoption.
Okay, thanks to Xuan, we now understand that the risk of unchecked data centers expansion. So the real question is, what can we do or what should we do about it? We come up with a practical yet balanced solution that builds around two policies that will be shown later in the slides that can ensure technology innovative can still continue without placing excessive pressures on local communities and public services. So the first policy is about infrastructure's autonomy, where no grid overload permitted and corporate funding mandates. What no grid overload permitted means, if a tech company wants to build a data center or AI center, they must first ensure that the local power grids are able to support their energy demands without affecting local residents, communities, and public services. What corporate funding mandate means is, if the local power grid fails to support its energy demand, the company must fully fund the necessary utilities upgrades and substation upgrades before construction begins. This is to ensure that prior expansion does not create public costs that communities have to bear, and communities will have maintained access to electricity. The second policy is about tiered resource taxation. Under this system, facilities that consume exceptionally large amount of water and energy would have to pay a higher tax rate. For example, suppose an average large data centers consumes around 3 million liters of water per day, and they would have to pay a baseline of 30% in tax rate. For facilities that consumes between 3 to 5 million liters of water per day, would have to pay 40% of tax rate due to excess water usage. And for facilities that consumes 5 million and over liters of water per day, would have to pay the highest tier of consumption, which is 50%. More importantly, these funds are legally ring-fenced and towards community projects upgrades and grid modernization projects and water conservation initiatives, rather than being transferred to taxpayer. So now let's imagine a future where these policies are successfully adopted. Technological companies no longer have to heavily rely on public infrastructures to support their operations. Instead, they invest in highly efficient and self-sustaining facilities with dedicated energy systems and advanced cooling systems that can significantly reduce resource consumptions. As a result, the local power grid will remain reliable and stable. Residents no longer have to be afraid that growing industrial demands will compromise their access to electricity, and that critical water will be protected rather than being diverted for large-scale industrial cooling. At the same time, economic growth will continue to flourish as governments will receive investments, employment opportunity will increase, and tax revenue will be generated by technology sector. Instead of a slowing innovation, these policies will create a framework where growth are allowed to occur sustainably and responsibly, ensuring that economic development will be able to grow in the future. Now, I will pass on to Jay for the conclusion.
Thank you, Qi. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know every new AI models standards or accepting millions of requirements, they're going to burn millions of gallons of water just for cooling the systems. And the most critical problem is they are often dropped from the exactly same place where the local community they are using. And what about the electricity? A massive sized data centers can consume energy that's equal to a medium-sized city, which means our power grid will be double pressure and it will be reduced the long stems. And behind the millions of dollars investment is hiding a massive energy monster. We can drain our rivers, max out our power grid, and push our infrastructure to a blank. However, it's not AI company going to suffer the consequences. It's people going to facing rolling blackout, water shortage, and increasing utility bills every single day. We can't allow that. We can't allow the innovation that are causing our human basic needs. Therefore, we are strongly encouraged and demands all the AI company that are planning to build a new facility need to undergo a strict environment and infrastructure impact assessment before a single brick is landed. And we need our government to step up to implement and draw a legislation to protect our infrastructure and resorts. And we know that it is possible. In March 2026, White House has signed an agreement with several major AI tech companies, which they agree that fully cover the cost of increased electricity productions for supplying the electricity to the data centers, which means they're going to buy and build the amounts of electricity and the infrastructure and the grid infrastructure to maintain the affordable energy to the Americans' households and deliver more infrastructure. At the end, tech was built to serve public, not consuming it. We are trading our most valuable result just for a couple of data space. It's time to demonstrate things: safe water, stable power grid, and sustainable tech. Just ensure and secure our infrastructure today so we can enjoy the innovation tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.